So it is 7:10 and I am calling the meeting to order. I would like to do just a quick roll call to make sure that everyone is here. So I'm just going to go by the folks I see on my screen. Anna Feldweg,
Here.
Barbara Morse,
Here.
John Cooley.
Here, and I'm driving.
Okay, thanks, John. Nicole Hammond
Here.
and Ann Sussman. And could you just take yourself off mute for a quick sec to say here?
Here.
Great. Okay. All right. Excellent. Then I think we can jump right into our main event. And we have Patrick Cooley, who is the developer of what's called 13B Com Ave, that triangle of grassy property right now that's adjacent to Reasons to Be Cheerful. He is here today to talk to us about his updated plans for that parcel. And I did want to update all of our new members on like where we have left off with Patrick's project. We heard from him like very early in 2023, the last time he was at one of our meetings. He gave us an update at that time as to how his plans for 13B were developing, and he had taken a pause with working on the project during COVID because supply chain issues were tough and interest rates were high, and it was just a really difficult time to be doing any building or planning projects. So with that, let me go ahead and pull up a letter that I wanted to read you. Let's see. Because that'll give you a sense for where we stood early in 2023, the last time Patrick was here. So let's just get this. I would be sharing it with you, but given my compromised technology here, I'm just gonna quickly read this. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm gonna put down my phone for a sec. Okay, so here we go. This letter is from early March 6, 2023, and this is a letter our committee wrote to the planning board, and the topic is updated 13B Commonwealth Ave development proposal in West Concord Junction. Right. And this letter was written by Ann, our very own Ann Sussman, with the agreement of all the other folks who were on the committee at that time. So the West Concord Advisory Committee met with Patrick Cleary of FX Investments on February 1st, 2023, to be brought up to date on the mixed-use 13B development planned for the heart of Junction Village. While the originally approved 2021 plan cannot go forward due to financial constraints, we were excited to learn that the newly suggested design will expand residential units on site from 8 as originally planned to 20. We believe offering smaller sized units as now proposed, including studios and 1 to 2 bedroom apartments, is most appropriate for our time and this very walkable location, a short distance from West Concord train station. We also think the expansion of the building footprint westward and the creation of concealed ground floor parking below 2 floors of residential space is a good idea. This gives the Junction Village a stronger sense of place and follows the intent of the Junction Village Design Guidelines Preamble adopted in 2021. Next paragraph. The design, we believe, is indeed iconic, as Patrick notes, setting the standard for smart growth development in Greater Boston. We thank him for all the creative efforts and persistence shown here. We are highly supportive of the amended 13B project and would be happy to continue working with the town and developer, however necessary, to help make it happen. Sincerely, Ann Sussman, on behalf of the members of WCAC. And then we listed out the members at that time. And I think actually, Barbara, you were part of this letter because I see your name on it. and John was as well. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of like give you guys a sense of where we last left off with Patrick, since there are some new members on the committee, and also refresh any of the members of the public who are joining, because now Patrick is going to pick up where he left off, so to speak, and tell us a little bit about how his plans are evolving. And with that, Patrick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Nice to see everyone tonight, and nice to meet the new members of the board. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Patrick Cleary. I'm laughing, but I've been involved in 13B now in various capacities and iterations going back all the way to 2010, which is striking to think about. The last time I appeared before the committee, we were exploring, as Susan mentioned, how we might be able to get this project moving forward. The project had initially been approved in 2018 after numerous years of working very closely with the committee. And when we were finally able, as Susan mentioned, to move forward with construction contracts after being approved, we were hit with some of the strongest economic headwinds of the last 40 years. Not to mention, we were in the throes of the pandemic, and the economics effects of that we're still trying to make our way through. Interest rates have been at prohibitive levels, and construction costs have been higher than they ever have been. Thankfully, Susan and John had reached out to me about a year or so ago at this point, and we brainstormed a little bit as to how the advisory committee and I might be able to work together to get this going again. And the result of that conversation was the concept that I brought in front of the board last February. I can't thank you enough for writing that letter that Susan just read. It was very eloquent, and it was very strong support that I had going into the hearing with the planning board that I participated in April. Unfortunately, the planning board was equally supportive of the changes that we had contemplated. So I was able to take the next steps in moving the design along over the last number of months with my architect. So I thought I'd do a very quick review of what we saw back in February to bring everybody up to speed and to refresh people's memories. And then I will show you how my architect was able to take that and crystallize it into a more concrete concept, and how we can move forward the preliminary interior layouts as well. And if I'm able to share my screen, can everyone see that? Wonderful.
Yeah.
So just to refresh everyone's memory, this is 13B Commonwealth Avenue with Brookside Square to the northeast, Neshoba Brook Bakery to the direct north, and then 116 Commonwealth Ave, the gas station that's currently being reviewed, to our west. This was a site plan that was part of our construction package. This was the approved footprint for the building. It was just a little over 6,500 square feet. And then this is the Beharrell Street extension going from Commonwealth Ave back to Beharrell Street and then beyond to the commuter rail station. And this was the surface parking lot in the rear of the site that contained about 33 parking spaces, if I'm not mistaken. So the thought that we reviewed back in February, at that time, I did not have the budget. I spent, we had done so many designs and redesigns at the time. I did not have the budget to run off and do a ton of new designs. So I put together just a very rough, PowerPoint presentation of what I had in my mind's eye to see if I was going in the right direction. And if I was, I would then, re-engage with my architect and further those designs. The plan and the thought had been to extend the building footprint back to the north over a portion of the surface parking lot. That would bring the parking, quite a bit of the parking, internal to the building in what we refer to as the podium parking level. Then there would be a second and third floor of residential units over that podium level. Again, I had not, had my architect design anything, but I did consult with him before I brought it in front of the committee, and he told me that there's no reason why we cannot accomplish what I had, in my mind's eye. Unfortunately, this is what he's been able to formalize, which is very similar to what I had in my mind. Now, I will come back to this and go through it in a lot more detail. This was the initial sketch going back to 2017, I believe, that got everybody excited. And this was the rendering that was approved in 2018. Sliding the building a little bit to the west, what we had tried to do, as people remember, is offset the east side of the building from the west side of the building, have a different color, so that it looked, there was a consistent motif, but it looked like it was two buildings that were butted up next to each other, that, is very similar to what you see in many village districts, historic village districts like West Concord. The thought was, very similar to what we were doing on the east side in this location, we could mimic going down the western property line in this direction, in this way. Now, this is a very, very crude, attempt by me to just play around with PowerPoint with an idea that maybe we could accomplish. Of course, we did talk about how going down the west property line, towards the rear of the building, we wouldn't have storefront, on the bottom floor, but we would instead have a decorative and very tasteful kind of fence in the rear there that would screen the podium level from passersby and from visibility. So after I reviewed this with the planning board, I was able to then go forward with my architect and released him to do these drawings. And thankfully, I think what he was able to do was a fantastic job of recreating this concept, and hopefully you feel the same way. So this is what he's been able to do. I have to admit, it's almost exactly what I had hoped he'd be able to do. And I'm very relieved that I did not have to come back to you tonight and say that we couldn't accomplish what we had talked about back in February. This is a bird's eye view of the building, and what this is intended to show is that the extended portion of the building to the rear is essentially in equal proportions to the eastern portion of the building. And then what we had also talked about, and I think it was actually a great idea by one of the members of the committee, was to try to have a walking path down the western property line in this location, which would meander its way from Commonwealth Ave back to the the Neshoba Brook Bakery, and points beyond, maybe connecting to the walking path that goes out towards Warner Pond. So I think this is a fantastic way to enliven this corner of Commonwealth Ave and enhance the walkability of the village in what has been, widely, considered kind of the edge of the village, where we enliven the frontage of Commonwealth Ave, but then turn the corner and head back north and connect various properties in this way. So going back to the interior design, of course, it's never as simple as you think it's going to be when it comes to the structural components of a building, but I think we've been able to make this work. As I mentioned, we extended the parking a little bit further into the building footprint to create some tandem parking spaces in this location here, if you can see my cursor. The egress and access to these spaces will be easily managed by those occupants of the 2-bedroom units who have, 2 parking spaces that go along with those units, as well as potentially the employees of the retail space who should be able to coordinate their exit and entrance times. We have a number of those tandem spaces in the underground parking garage at Brookside Square, and over 8 years of operating that building, we've never had a complaint by any of the occupants. On the second and third level, we were actually able to lay out 12 units on each floor for a total of 24 units. We had talked about, maybe being able to fit 20 units, but when we laid the 20 units out, we found that the columns that were supporting the upper 2 floors were actually falling right in the middle of this drive aisle. And when we were able to move that back to the back of the lot, similar to how the drawing was proposed initially, we were able to get 2 units on each floor for a total of 4 additional units. Going to 24 units, of course, with the 20% affordable here, would allow us to go from 4 affordable units to an additional 5th unit. In terms of the upper floors, this is your typical floor size. This would be what both the second and third floors would look like. We are looking at well, let me back up. You may remember when we had the initial project, the unit sizes were humongous. We had 6 3-bedroom units. I think the smallest 3-bedroom unit was 1,450 square feet, and I think they went all the way up to 1,750 square feet. I think that is not necessary to have units of this size, of that size in this location. This new design allows us to have a better mix of unit types, as we talked about back in February, with an offering of 8 studios, which is 4 studios per floor, 6 1-bedrooms, and 10 2-bedrooms, which we feel like provides a better variety of choice for more diverse renter base and allows us to offer different entry points in terms of pricing. So going back to the first level, on the eastern side of the building, we've laid out 2,500 square feet of retail space. In the middle of the building, we have what I consider to be our operations area for the building. This would include a mail room, a trash room, an elevator machine room, a janitor closet, utility rooms. We also have a property manager and a leasing office in this location down here, which would also have access to a bathroom. One of the major criticisms that we had received from our leasing professionals and our property manager in the previous design was that we were seriously lacking in common spaces and community spaces that would enable our residents to get out of their apartments and interact with each other. We had designed the building in the midst of COVID, and we thought a good trade-off was the fact that these apartments at that time were so huge that people would be able to spread out without being in each other's way, which, if you remember, at that time was a very big priority. But I think we convinced ourselves a little bit too much that would be acceptable. With a building of this size, there's a level of amenities that are demanded by your tenants. And with the smaller units upstairs, we want to encourage tenants to get out of their units and interact with their neighbors. Based on my experience at Brookside, it's been incredibly gratifying to see how much our residents use the community room for book clubs and game nights. There have been wine tastings and catered dinner nights. We've had movie nights and musical performances, and we've even had artists come and host learn how to paint nights. So on the first floor, you'll see a community room as well as a health room that will have a couple of treadmills, stationary bikes, and some free weights. Nothing fancy, but the health room at Brookside gets a incredible amount of use. I've also asked my architect to look at how we can design a few small offices in the community room along this back wall that could be used by people working remotely who want to change the scenery and get out of their apartments. I've done this in other apartment communities that I've built, and it becomes a true live, work, play environment within a village that I think is what all smart growth development is really striving for. It will definitely enliven this stretch of Commonwealth Ave, which, as I mentioned before, has really kind of been the edge of the village. So that takes us to parking. So I'll show you this design. In this way, we've been able to lay out 18 parking spaces under the building. That includes 5 tandem parking spaces. There's 18 parking spaces outside of the building as well. I had been reviewing the language from the draft zoning for this area that I believe had been looked at and studied for a town meeting warrant. I don't think that zoning language ended up going forward. However, I saw that language contemplated including street parking in front of a property like 13B in a village district within the parking ratio of that property. And I thought that made perfect sense. And frankly, I can't believe that I had not thought of that before. In front of in front of 13B along Commonwealth Ave, there are 6 parking spaces in this location. From a practical perspective, these spaces are going to be used along with a number of other spaces along Commonwealth Ave by, the customers of the retail. So if the members of the committee still feel like this is a suitable approach to parking within the village district, what I'd love to propose is a parking, layout that works in the following way. So with the 6 spaces on the street, there'd be 42 spaces associated with 13B. We would have 25 square feet of retail, and per zoning at 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet, that would equate to 10 spaces. And for 24 units, if you remember when we were here in February, we had been approved for a parking ratio of 1.5 spaces per residential unit. We had talked about how, maybe that was appropriate for the units that were as large as they were, the 2 bedrooms and the 3 bedrooms, but maybe, for a studio or a 1 bedroom, a 1.5 parking ratio was not very appropriate in this location. So what I've looked at is, could we make 1.33 parking spaces per unit work? That would equate to 32 spaces, which added to the 10 would be the 42 spaces that I reviewed above. We can also look at this in a different way, which is on a per unit, unit mix, unit type basis. And I think we talked about this a little bit. I think I went over this with the planning board that this may be more appropriate, but if we have 8 studios with 1 parking space per unit, that would be 8 spaces. If we have 6 1-bedrooms at 1.25 spaces per unit, that rounded up would be 8 spaces. And for 10 two-bedroom units at 1.5 spaces per unit, that would be 15 spaces. So all told, that would bring us, in addition to the retail, to 41 spaces. That would be necessary. And if we add the spaces on the street, we would be at 42 spaces. So we also talked a little bit about the green space that was associated with the project and making sure that we could retain, some of the nice and meaningful green space that had been a part of the original proposal. The green space was this triangular area in the rear of the building, as well as a smaller area towards the frontage on the southwestern portion of the site. And I think we've been able to improve upon this in terms of keeping the great majority of the green space in the rear of the building, which would really serve as a courtyard. And then we've been able to improve upon the western portion of the building where we'd be able to allow pedestrians to meander through the entire length of that western property boundary back to the Brookside, to the Neshoba Brook, area, rather than what we had before, really got cut off once you got past this initial green space. You really ran into a electrical transformer. You ran into a dumpster pad, and this was really, if I remember correctly, this had a fence running the length of our property boundary. So I think that this is an overall improvement to the fabric of the village. So that's really my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments that the board may have. I appreciate you giving me the amount of time that you did to go through this.
Thanks, Patrick. I was able to join on my computer now, so I'm actually shown twice, which is kind of crazy. But what I'm hoping we can do is have committee members raise their hand if they want to ask a question. And after we get through the committee members' questions, we can certainly move to the general public's questions. So with that, do any of the committee members have questions? Barbara, go ahead.
So I'm curious about the reserving 6 spaces on the street. And so somebody else who comes along, go into reasons to be cheerful, those spaces would be unavailable to them?
No, the intention would not be to reserve those for 13B, be a recognition that they are public spaces. I'm not looking to purchase them or lease them or anything of that nature. It's more of a recognition or a request, if it's appropriate, to look at it that way based upon some discussions that I understood were already happening, and maybe this could work into the discussions that were already happening. And if I misinterpreted that, my apologies, and we can look at it at a different way. But there are a number of properties along Commonwealth Ave that really rely on the Commonwealth Ave for all of their parking, for the retail, and this would just add to the village retail.
So you're essentially hoping that you can include those 6 in the count, which would bring your numbers, compute your numbers a little differently.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Barbara. Why don't we go to Elizabeth, because she put her hand up, and then Anne after that. So Elizabeth, go ahead.
Patrick, I'm not sure what you were looking at as far as zoning bylaw amendments, but I can tell you from the planning board's perspective, they've never had a conversation about, at least within the zoning bylaw and the parking requirements, allowing people to take credit for on-street parking. How the proposal would have to work is that under the current zoning bylaw, it's two parking spaces per dwelling unit. And then the provisions for the mixed use going forward, and requesting a waiver, relief from parking based on, different circumstances. And there is current conversation with the planning board, especially with the MBTA communities, multifamily zoning. The feedback they have heard with parking is to what you are proposing. Actually, the thought was an industry standards leaning towards 1 space per studio and 1 bedrooms, 1.5 space count for 2 bedrooms, and 2 spaces for 3 bedrooms or more. And based on where our project is located, this close to the commuter rail. And so that is a current conversation. But this project to move forward, you would be still having to request relief from parking. You would
Sure.
still need to go through and do, the parking analysis. Concord Academy went through something, similar, and then, did go through, do a parking analysis, have to do parking counts for the spaces on the street. And the parking in the West Concord Village is a little bit different. It's a little bit more highly used throughout the day, and so I'll kind of just put that out there, that it would still be part of that conversation. Understanding with, previously it was 20 units, and understanding how the architecture and structurally has to work. But I'm still wondering why you would not, there's a lot of space on the first floor for the residential units, which does, I don't think, add to the village vibrancy that everybody has really been working for, and why you would not have on each floor common area that could be used instead of taking that much space on the first floor, right? Along the streetscape. So, but I did just want to put out there about the parking aspect
Sure.
of things.
So to address the common space and the community space, one of the main issues that we had going back to not being able to move forward with the previous design was the amount of retail space and accounting for that much of the revenue. As I'm sure people are aware, retail right now is getting crushed, and banks and financiers are not willing to take a risk on what would be speculative construction for retail. Unfortunately, we do, I think, need for a vibrant community to have some legitimate community space. When you do look at the size of the space, it would only be about a little over 1,000 square feet for the actual community space, the gathering space itself. And there's an awkward space that really is not viable commercial space on the corner, kind of wedged in, where the parking garage comes into the footprint, that we thought would be viable for the health room, for the project. So that was the thought on that. Plus, with the parking requirements of 4 per 1,000 square feet for the retail, also how some of the interior space comes down and cuts the space, awkwardly in the middle of the space. We thought 2,500 square feet was a very good amount of retail for this
Right.
footprint.
Then the only last thing I'll add, because after this I'm gonna apologize to Susan, but I do have to jump off after this. But the trash room, really have somebody who's not just the architect, but somebody who's very knowledgeable about that, because for the retail space, as far as trash, cardboard, recycling, and whether that space did not look very large for retail and 24 residential units. You know, unless somebody was coming to empty that every day.
We'll
So
be
I would
looking very
have
closely at
somebody-
that. Yes.
I would have somebody kind of just look into that, that amount of space that's dedicated to that.
Agreed.
Thanks, Elizabeth. You're gonna leave me with hosting rights for this, right? I'm now in the computer version of it, so I think I should be good to host.
Yes, when I leave, I will make you host.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. All right. So let's go to Anne.
Oh, well, Patrick, it's great. What is the time frame for this project?
So what I'd love to do is, if we feel like I'm moving in the right direction, you know, have a meeting similar to this with the planning board. I had appeared in front of them in April, just to bring them up to speed. I would love to have a preliminary meeting with Elizabeth and the planning staff just to see, you know, where they think we are and what I should be prepared for, you know, for that planning board hearing. One issue that I might be going a little afield here, but one issue that I need to address is the fact that I was a partner with Brookside at the time this was initially approved. I have since bought my partners in Brookside out of this. It's now owned by a separate entity, and I need to kind of understand, it's more of a question, how do we bifurcate that approval now that it's owned by a separate entity? Because it had been tied to the Brookside Square, you know, master plan initially. So we don't have to get into that tonight, but that is one kind of little wrinkle that I'd love to understand. Coming out of the planning board, if we do get a thumbs up, you know, we have a number of months ahead of, you know, construction, drawing, designs, you know, building permit review, et cetera. So I'd hope that if this is a go and interest rates cooperate, construction costs cooperate, I'd love to be breaking ground maybe, you know, mid to late summer, early fall, maybe, but a lot needs to go in our favor for that to happen. The good thing is every day that goes on, you know, my hope is that it's one day, you know, closer to the world changing and the Fed recognizing that they really need to drop interest rates if we want to get some growth going. So, you know, every day that goes by, hopefully we get one day closer to you know, where we need to be.
Right.
And if you don't mind, just to jump in, your proposal does require an amendment to the special permit. So you will still need to go through the Board of Appeals to amend that special permit, and
That makes sense. Yep.
you know, you will need to have a traffic and parking consultant do the parking analysis for the relief for parking, and so just to be aware, that's, you know, that because of the legal notices and all of that, and having to go through this committee for a formal recommendation to the planning board and the planning board to the ZBA, you're still talking about 3 months to go through that process.
Understood.
Okay, good.
Been
Barbara,
through
go
before
ahead.
with Brookside. Hopefully it doesn't take the 3 or 4 years that it went through Brookside, but you know, I'm prepared to navigate it.
Barbara, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Patrick, just kind of review the amount of outdoor space, because there isn't very much. And I realize that you've added some from the last go around with the path going down toward Neshoba Brook. But that space in the back, it looks like a small dog park. Would it be usable? How do you envision people using it?
Sure. So to begin with, it's a small property. I don't have off the top of my head, and I can follow up with the exact amount of open space that has in the rear. But it would be an outdoor space where people can, you know, sit and, you know, we can see some Adirondack chairs being out there, depending upon who the retail tenant is. We can have some interaction with that retail tenant, but we view it as, you know, a miniature gathering space similar to the courtyard that we have, you know, back at Brookside. That you know, if you go back there, people are walking through, you know, quite a bit every day.
Will you need a approval for a smaller than typical space, given the size of the units?
I do think that if I remember correctly, we had asked for relief as part of the initial project, which we received, and we would, you know, we would pursue that again, and hope that, you know, the proportions of open space to building and open space to the parcel are still, you know, appealing to the town.
I actually have a question. If for some reason the parking spaces on the street aren't able to be included in what you need, is there an option to increase the amount of podium parking in order to absorb those 6 spaces?
We could take a look at that. I would envision that the podium parking would come down even further into the, you know, the commercials, you know, bottom floor of the space. You know, we would most likely, you know, need to do tandem on both the back of that garage level and the front. But we could study that.
Okay. And I just wanted to put in a plug for solar panels on the roof. I think you had said that the building would possibly be all electric, and I think that would be fantastic. The solar panels on the roof would help defray electricity costs for your residents, or help defray the costs of running the shared electric in the building, so possibly help whoever is managing the building with those utility costs.
We can take a look at that.
And I do think that I don't know if John can speak up, but I know John always likes to have EV charging available at these different new properties, being that he's also in the clean energy business like me. But John, I don't know, I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, actually, I just got back to my desk.
Oh,
First
great.
of all, thanks, Patrick, for all the thorough work on this. And before, aside from EV charging, did you have any ideas about like outdoor art work or murals? I think we had at previous meetings talked about that, especially on the extension westward. Is that still part of the, yeah?
I can bring the plan back up. Where did that go? Let's see, bear with me for a moment. So where we thought might be an appropriate place for some public art could be in this area here. That would be visible to people entering the village from the west.
Right. Cool. Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned. And then, yeah, I mean, for EV charging, I think I think it's wise to at least plan for, especially if you're doing site work, to at least plan for that in the future. And we've seen other plans where there's like 1 or 2 podiums installed for level 2 charging, but I think if we're thinking 30 years out into the future, it's wise to just think a little bit more ahead than that, especially if you have residents parking there, and it might be more economical to do some of that in advance.
So with the podium space, I think we'd be a lot more comfortable doing the EV charging stations, you know, under that structure. So we think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and then I think I just wanted to reiterate the thinking around the parking was I'm not sure like what venue this was, if it was last meeting or, but it was sort of like what Elizabeth described about, you know, this is close to the train station. Can we get a little more creative? We think there's a conversation going on about some of these concepts. And
So
also
I'll
Yeah, go ahead.
follow up and send you the language that I had been looking at, and maybe I misinterpreted it. I also thought that, you know, there was some discussion when the Thoreau district zoning was being looked at the town meeting, that the planners associated with that project were talking about the appropriateness of you know, street parking in a village district. You know, going towards a project's, you know, parking ratio. If I misinterpreted it, my apologies. If I misread it, my apologies. And, you know, this is not something I'm trying to, you know, pound through or anything. If people don't like it, you know, we'll adjust and we'll accommodate 100% of the parking on site. No problem.
It could be that the consultants who put together the Thoreau district plan had proposed that sort of allowance. And I think ultimately the planning board didn't make any changes related to the consultant's advice at town meeting, but it would be interesting to see if that, you know, the consultants bringing that up, it was because they'd seen it happen in other towns or something like that. So that could be a place to look, is that consultant report for the Thoreau Depot. They had a study done.
I think we have to be aware, though, that the tendency, and I see this in towns in Connecticut as well, is to go for 0 parking minimums, particularly when you're, you know, and that's the direction we need to go in. You know, and it's just not sustainable to just make so much of our town parking. And the problem with West Concord Cultural District is most of it is parking. And that's a big problem. And we've been talking about this as a future thing for 2024, to really hire a parking consultant, do a transit study. There's real issues. We have to do it. What amazing thing I've learned about towns like Rockport, which is a cultural district, is they got a grant to study parking and to really make it so that there'd be equal access for everybody, and you wouldn't have to do it like we're doing it here. So I think we really need to, it'd be really insightful for us to look at what other cultural districts do to handle parking issues. And I think we need to go towards 0 parking minimums.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I think that's great advice. And I think we can kind of take a look at what's out there. I mean, ultimately, Patrick will have to figure out what the planning board would approve. So it could be that we're going to have to slowly move in the direction of 0. Like maybe it's going to get lower, but not to 0 just yet. It's hard to say what can happen, but I feel like 0 might be kind of fast for the community we are in right now.
I had been under the impression that, you know, the movement and the encouragement was to try to get away from, you know, more parking. And I thought I thought I thought I was addressing that coming here with this, but if that's not the case, you know, I you know, my apologies, and you know, I'll adjust and go back to 100% parking, you know, on the site.
Hey, Patrick and Susan. So I have to jump off to clarify, support the creative thinking around parking that Patrick is suggesting here, just to clarify my intention with that comment. But I do have to jump to a work meeting with Japan right now.
Thank you, John.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see if any members of the public have any comments. I'm not seeing any additional ones from the committee. Is there anyone from the public who wants to make a comment? Honor, go ahead. Oh, and could you honor state your address as well before you start speaking?
Yes, Honora Weiner, 1011 Main Street. I walk to West Concord. I go there every day, sometimes twice a day. And I think that the issue about the street parking is an important one because those 6 spaces are often full. They're being used by people who are frequenting the area, the commercial businesses, and I don't think it can be included in the number for this project because they're already in use and not necessarily available outside of what's already in demand in the area.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that perspective. That's important to know.
Okay.
Anyone else have commentary? Okay. So Patrick, what do you think your next steps are? Are you going to be filing an application with the planning board? I mean, Elizabeth seemed to be listing a lot of different pieces in the process. What should we know about so that we can keep an eye on this?
So it's a good question. I think I need to meet with Elizabeth and go through what next steps would be. I certainly don't want to waste the planning board's time if it's felt that they don't, want to see this progress report. That's what we had talked about when I went in there before. I'd love to, these plans, if I were to do a full submittal, I mean, it costs tens of thousands of dollars to, put together a full submittal to the planning board just to get an application in. And if it's not going in the right direction, if it's not a supported project, at that point, I don't know where we stand.
Okay. So it sounds like you're going to get with Elizabeth and others to sort out what the planning board, I guess, needs to hear as part of a presentation that you would make.
I think that's a good next move.
Okay. I think, at the time that when you submit to the planning board, I think there'll be like more specifics related to this, and we could certainly look at it again more officially, or we'd love to make certain that you are recognized as having visited our committee with these plans and that we continue to like the design. It seems like folks are in agreement with that, and we just had a couple of questions about the parking.
Well, I think there's diversity of opinion about the parking.
Right, there is diversity.
I don't want Patrick to think we don't want less parking. I think, well, I don't know, that we have to talk about that. I think there's some confusion about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, there's definitely within the community, there are very different perspectives on what the path for more / less parking should be. So I think it's good for Patrick to be aware of that there are a lot of different opinions out there about it that might come up at the planning board as well.
So are you going to present this next to the planning board next year or this year?
So I think part of it will be based upon the discussion that I have with the planning staff and their advice. I'd love to get a sense tonight of whether this is a scheme that the West Concord Advisory Committee would be supportive of when I do go in front of the planning board.
Do you want another letter from us?
A letter, or if anybody were willing to come and speak at the planning board, anything and everything is helpful and very, very much appreciated.
Okay, then you need to tell us the date she'll be at the planning board.
I don't think he doesn't know that yet.
Okay, we'll stay in touch.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you on that.
Because I think, I can only speak for myself, but I'm very supportive of this project and I'm very supportive of minimizing parking. I think this is a fantastic project and we need to get it done.
Thank you, Ann.
And I think it really is, it's part of the, the transit planning, you know, the MBTA thing, it all fits. It's brilliant. And we need to show people we can do it. I think there's a lot of confusion about it getting done. So I think there's a certain urgency to get it done.
So you know what I'd like to do, and I don't want to put other members of our committee on the spot, but I do want to give them an opportunity, since they haven't spoken yet, to let us know what their thoughts are. I'll get back to you in a second, Barbara, but I didn't hear from Anna or Nicole, and I'd love to ask you all like what you think. You may be seeing this for the first time, and so I'm curious to know what you think, and it can be different from what we think, so it's okay.
I like it. Oh, sorry, Nicole had her hand up. But I like it, and I think it is really in keeping with the rest of the village, much more than anything else we've seen so far. So I'm encouraged.
Great. Okay. And Nicole, go ahead.
I second that. I think I'm very appreciative of your knowledge of West Concord and trying to put together different design aspects, but making it seem coherent and appropriate. And I love the idea of the two pieces on the side looking like separate buildings. I think that's very complementary to the streetscape of West Concord. And I also agree with the discussion about the parking prior. I don't think you should necessarily count the street parking whatsoever, because I frequent that area too, and they're often full. But I really appreciate your presentation this evening.
Thank you very much. I will.
Great.
I will reanalyze the parking and take those front spaces out.
Great to hear from everyone. Okay. So I guess, Patrick, we'll just be in touch with you in terms of where you're going next and how we can, you know, support you with a letter and or an appearance at the planning board to just make sure they're aware that you presented to us and that we overall really like the design and where you're going with this.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. So keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen, guys. This is great.
Yeah, here.
Awesome.
Have a great night, everyone.
Okay, thanks. And the rest of the committee, please don't log off yet because we have something else to do tonight. All right, great. Okay, so let's see. We want to try and finalize a little bit more a letter to the planning board about the revised plans for 166 Comm Ave. And I did circulate something by email, and that can be certainly changed a lot, but I know it's easy to start with something versus just a blank slate. So I think what I'm going to do is pull that up for us to do a little bit of just like real-time editing, and everyone is welcome to share your thoughts, and I'm sure we can get to something that will work for all of us. And then if it needs to be polished off a little bit more outside of this meeting, I can, you know, send around another draft, but I'd love to get it like to 80% or something tonight. So after we do that, then the last thing I'd like to do is approve minutes that Barbara sent over and that I circulated around, and then we can probably adjourn for the evening. So with that, let me do a screen share, and I'm going to bring up the draft letter. If it's up here anywhere. Our agenda. All right, so those are a bunch of agendas. Let me get over here. Here we go. All right. All right, so I'm going to try to crank up the resolution on this so it's more readable maybe than it currently is. Try 150. Okay. All right. So I jotted down some thoughts that I think encapsulated some of the discussion we had last time. And I also had a chance to look at the official plans that the developers of 166 have submitted to the ZBA. So a lot of this is coming from, I guess, a confluence of different sources. But the most important source is you all and your thoughts and your impressions of the changes that the developer presented. So I just want to remind you, as we are going over this, we need to be like very fact-based, constructive. We need to recognize the developer did change a good deal of what they were suggesting for their second iteration and recognize that they did put some work in. But we can certainly say that we like it or that we still are seeking changes. Whatever we need to articulate is what we should. So, one of the first things I wanted to talk about is the new circulation plan, which is kind of illustrated here on our own makeshift drawing with me kind of putting in an additional exit in this red bar here. So the one red bar is how folks would come and go into 166 COM, and then the second red bar that's like horizontally positioned is it would be an exit only from what the developers had said, and you'd only be able to leave the parking lot and turn right, so go towards Route 2. It would be kind of like a one-way situation where that's what you would be doing coming out there. So this is a big change because they hadn't previously had a second exit point in the development, and because I just wanted to talk through what you all had thought about that adjustment. And I guess we should probably do hands raising again. So hold on one second. Let me get to the point where I can see everybody. Okay. All right, Barbara, go ahead.
Well, I think you're right to give them credit for trying to come up with a better solution for an incredibly difficult corner.
Yeah.
I don't think it fully resolves the problem. I mean, clearly our concerns are that adding the fact that he's gone now to mainly residences with just a very small retail space clearly changes the dynamic of cars coming and going. And I know you say that a little further in the letter. There's a piece of me that says, I wish he could move the whole building down and not have any entrances or exits as close to that corner as he could and have it only be further up Commonwealth, but I'm not sure that that's feasible either.
Wait, let me just clarify for a sec. When you say that, Barbara, do you say, are you thinking like the entrance and exit closer to Route 2 and just have one way of getting in there, or just if
closer to it would have to be this side of the bridge, so closer to the brook, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be in an ideal world, either that, or as you also said in the letter, sharing entrances and exits. I wanted to draw one into Patrick's design with another building that's either already there or is going to be built. So I think, yes, we need to give him a lot of credit for changing the design, for trying to come up with a better solution to enter and exit. The fact, so that's not only that he moved some of the entrances and exits, but that he changed it from the restaurant, which would necessitate a lot of traffic, to just residences. You don't anticipate people coming and going in and out all day long if it's a residence.
Right.
But I think we still have to say this is still a really challenging corner, and this is an improvement, but we're not sure that it really solves the problem.
Well, I totally agree with you. And Barbara, I've had the exact same thought. I don't think this plan works. And I think the main driveway has been exactly what you said, closer to the brook. I went and measured it. It's 24 feet. It's on the straightaway. Driveways on curves are hugely dangerous. This just doesn't work. And remember, we're designing the gateway to our cultural district. They've turned it into a parking lot. It just doesn't work. The building's too big. The whole thing, the plan doesn't work. And in addition, when they presented the plan, I am a licensed architect. I did serve for 6 years on the design review board in Acton. You have to present a plan that shows the context. They presented a plan that didn't even show the context. They presented a plan like it was dangling off a Christmas tree on its own. That's not how it is. So this plan doesn't work.
Okay.
But I think, and it just doesn't work. And you can't have, you don't want, the 6-way, this is a great drawing, but it's a little confusing. It's hard to understand, but you don't want an 8-way intersection. It just doesn't work. And I think I'm not sure that lot shaped like a narrow triangle can have that dense residential district. For the past 100 years, it never has. It's had one building that barely is 150, 200 square feet. There's a reason for that.
Okay, so Anne, I think let's give some other folks a chance to share their perspective, but I hear what you're saying, and I think we all,
But I
share
think
the
we have to
concern.
simplify it. I think we have to say 3 key points. It's too dangerous, and there's not evidence-based design. You can't show me any, and also having people live so close to a road, it'll be dangerous for them to live here. And it's not, you got to say that. We got to say it doesn't work. Even the drawings they show, no one's going to be arriving into our culture district on a drone. They just showed a picture from a drone view. They didn't show what it would be like coming in from Acton or coming in from Route 2. Those are the pictures we need to see.
So I'm not sure that they're required to show those things by what our planning board asks for. But Anne, let me just pause you because I'd love to hear from some of the other members because we do need to get everyone's thoughts into this letter submission. So I'm going to go to Anna first and then Nicole after that. Anna, could you go ahead?
Sure. My one comment is I wonder if we could suggest that they use a style that's more similar to what we just saw. So at least the two would be consistent with each other, because this is much more modern looking and looming. And I don't know exactly what the elements are. Maybe it's the little canopies on the other one or the finishes on the roof, but this just doesn't fit nearly as well as the other one. So that would be one suggestion. The other was a question, which is, I thought that there were plans to change the layout of Kenny Dunn Square so it wasn't so dangerous. Isn't that the case?
Yes. So I think the Public Works Department has applied for a Mass Works grant, which is a well-known grant program that communities apply to with plans to adjust things in their community. At any rate, those grant answers, like who won the grants for this year, have not been made known yet. So we're not sure if they actually can have the money to do it, but I can probably bring up also a schematic that shows you what their idea had been. But I also think I think they also are seeking this developer's cooperation in making Kenny Dunn Square a more safe intersection, because I was reading a little bit about that. Go ahead, tell me what you might know about that, Anna.
Well, I don't know any more than that, other than I would think that maybe this developer could draw out what it would look like if Kenny Dunn Square were a simple T junction.
Yeah. We were talking about that. 3 people have brought that up independently. 2 people in the committee. It should be a T, and that roadway should be filled in where you turn immediately off as you come in from Route 2. It should be a T junction because it's full stop. So it's not coordinated the way it needs to be.
All right, so let's see. I would love to move to, I think, Nicole, you had some comments, right?
I agree with everybody. I think Barbara and Anne have similar points in that it would be brilliant if the roadway could be towards the brook. I don't know what it means towards the wetlands or whatnot. But it also is a cornerstone building, and it'd be so lovely to see a building along the curve or the T that would really be significant to the representation of West Concord. I also get concerned about T-boning on the exit towards across from Minuteman. I think that's a perfect example of a T-bone, as cars are coming in from Route 2 Rotary and going towards Ave towards Deborah's. If any car is trying to make a left, I can easily see it get T-boned. And I also agree with Anne in that I was really impressed with Patrick's design. And I don't say that easily because I know design is subjective, but I thought he captured a lot of the essence of West Concord. And if I believe in the beginning of the meetings that I started to attend, that was something that you told this developer, that they should be looking at Patrick's designs for 13B.
Yeah.
As an example. Am I remember that correctly?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. We would love to see the building, whatever ends up on 166, look very symbiotic with what's at 13B. And I don't think it needs to be exactly the same, but it probably needs to pick up the same threads of, the architecture that's throughout the rest of the district, the way the 13B building does.
And there are great examples of that, because I did a bit of a dive, and when I was trying to understand the what the West Concord oh my gosh, the design lines.
Yeah.
And you have Deborah's, you have Salt Box, you have Tea Cakes, I think, and you definitely have Maynard, or the Concord Outdoor Store, which is a brilliant example of design. I remember when that was being built, and it was just great. And I realize those are the newer buildings, and there are other, but I kind of feel like that's what West Concord is going towards these days.
I think it's Concord Outfitters.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. As much as I miss Mandrioli's so much, the grocery store, but I think that Woods Hill did a lovely job fitting themselves in.
Right. Right.
Yeah, do you really thinking tea cakes? I mean, tea cakes isn't a.
You know what, I am in an odd way, because there seems to be a little bit of history there. I mean, it has the awnings, it fits in.
But Concord Outfitters is probably the newest of the buildings.
Right. But I'm just saying those are some of they're similar style, perhaps.
Mhm.
Right. And I think what's important with Concord Outfitters is to know it's really evidence-based. The owner of Concord Outfitters went to a place in New Hampshire where there was a successful old store. I think it was New Hampshire or Maine. And he said, I'm going to copy that store that's in the center of the town. And that's exactly what he did. And that's why it works so well.
Yeah, it's really turned out nicely. So yeah, we have an image of this proposed building, and maybe it's a little bit too, I'm not sure if I'm using the right terms, but like maybe it's a bit too monolithic, and maybe we'd like it to have some color variety. I think it's nice that it's not just like one surface on each side. There are different like jut outs, but I wonder if maybe injecting a little bit of color could make it better.
But I think, Susan, the problem is you will never see this because you're going to be seeing it, from the street. And that's what we want people to do. We want people to bike and walk to West Concord. What will they see? This doesn't really tell you. I guess the elevation drawings they showed kind of tell you. I think this drawing is very confusing.
Yeah, so I think we'd want to see a view of the proposed building from street view, wouldn't we? As opposed to kind of like an artistic drone shot, which this seems to be. And it does a nice job of capturing everything that's going to be on the roof. And it's a good one view, but I think we would need to see some other views of it to really.
That's exactly right. And I think we need, what you said this once that was brilliant. What you said, it's really the bookend, it's the entryway. It's the bookend marking West Concord Cultural District as you come in from Acton and as you come in from Route 2. And so it should be, I mean, I think it's very ambitious, but it should be something you want to look at, and it should reflect Tea Cakes, Concord Outfitters, Woods Hill Table,
Yeah. Okay.
and designing it, and you can't, it doesn't work what they gave us.
All right, so I think, Anna, did you have your hand up again?
Well, I was just gonna suggest that because it's the first building that you come to, the fact that it's so tall and tight to the road is really, it's sort of like a shock. Like it should be sort of a lower building that kind of eases you into the town. And I mean, I'm sure they're just wanting to maximize what they can put on this, but I guess the theme is that it's just too much for that space, especially because it's the first thing you come to and you just want like a little ramp up kind of thing.
I totally agree with you. And I think in looking at it, the site is too small. He
Yeah.
doesn't have the site, the site that Patrick Cleary has is like double or triple the size. The site is much too small for what they want to put on it.
So yeah, what do we think about that? I mean, would it be an appropriate suggestion that potentially this building is, I don't know, smaller, positioned differently? Is there a way that we can be productive in like articulating what is, our vision here? I don't know.
I think we could say we'd be happy to work with a developer to consider something that is a smaller gateway that is fitting on the very constrained site in a way that won't require as much parking and that invites walkability and bikeability. This front door, the way they have it, is very, very dangerous. I mean, it's just, it doesn't work.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Wait, I'm sorry. I've lost the mute and unmute on my thing. My concern is that the last time we spoke with a developer, he said he would basically wait it out and do whatever he wanted to. Am I misinterpreting that or remembering that? He seemed.
I do not recall him saying that. I think what he said was that some of the criticism was so harsh that he would pull. In other words, he'd pull.
I thought he was going to say that he was going to wait it out and build even more units on the site.
No, well, he wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay.
I would be cautious about trying to tell him he has to make a smaller building, because I think what we're going to find is he can't afford to do that.
Right.
But I think we can say that. I think we can say, because I think I totally agree with what, Anna was saying and Nicole's saying, more dimensionally suitable. And it's my understanding too, I might be wrong here, he doesn't own the site yet.
Right, he has a purchase and sale for it, yeah.
He hasn't bought it yet.
Right.
So this is just throwing out what might happen, and then if it goes forward, then he buys it. So this could still become something else, or someone else could come and opt him out.
I see. So one way, and I'm interested in what your thoughts are and everybody else's thoughts are. So the way Patrick had the recessing of the two sides that were white and the main section being red, does that, to me, that tricks the eye a wee bit to make it look like three buildings.
Yeah.
Would that be something that's acceptable?
Well, I think that works for Patrick really well. I think that works really well. And then it plays off the red of the Concord Outfitters. I mean, it works really well. It really makes sense. And it makes it look like a kind of dynamic streetscape. I think here, it's a very constrained site. And there's a reason for the past 2 centuries, nothing's been built on it. It's a very difficult site. And I'm beginning to think that the developer, this isn't as good a site.
Well, I mean, possibly the reason nothing's been built is because the person who owned it chose to continue operating a business there. I mean, that's probably why. And at this point now, the property is going to change hands, and one of the uses being considered is for mixed use, commercial and residential. So
but I think we should note, though, it's a very constrained site. I mean, we should put in the measurements of it. I can measure it on the plan. It's very.
I think that's obvious. I think everybody knows it's a very constrained.
But I think we can say it. This is a super constrained site. It's going to be difficult to build on it and provide safe pedestrian access and provide safe. And then just getting in and out. I mean, this is not workable. If this is built, you will not be able to leave the Neshoba Brook Bakery. You're not going to be able to see out. And in addition, look what they've done right now, actually, where this, you see the T? Right now, the actual exit here is where the T is. What they've done is they've moved it down 18 feet, so it's closer towards the curve. Then they've built it 12 feet. Someone pulling out of Neshoba Brook Bakery won't be able to see. It's just not functional.
Yeah, well, I think, the town hired their own consultant to kind of analyze this positioning and the circulation. And so that consultant has brought up a lot of the things that we've been talking about related to the roadway and how cars might move through this. So I think other folks are putting their heads on
But
this.
we have to say it though, and I also think what they show in this footprint form is the big gateway becomes a parking lot. All you're just gonna see are multiple parking lots. That's not how, that's not how.
That's what I wanted to say, is just like, it's so unsightly to just come around the corner and see nothing but parking lot. It's unsightly now. And it would be
It's going to be
wonderful if we
double.
could
It's
get
going to be
rid of
double
that.
worse. It's going to be double worse, and it'll be unsafe. It won't work.
Could the building be long and thin and go along the road with the parking all behind it, or the
That could
podium
work.
parking
That'd be
could
brilliant. That could work. But I think your idea, I think it was you, Anna, or maybe it was someone else who mentioned the parking going where the residential main entry is. That's where the parking should go, and that's where the main parking is now. Where they,
So residential, so you're saying parking would be like kind of where the footprint of this roof deck
yes,
is.
that's where the parking should be.
And then the
Under the
building would
building?
be more
Or-
forward.
Or the building could be, we could do what Patrick Cleary did was, make a pilot hide some of the parking underneath and have the building most in the second or third story, or have a building with on the right side here, the far right, make that just your commercial store. And then have this, I don't know, there's different ways you could move the building all up. Or maybe your idea is really good too, Anna, make it a 1.5 story building that's, I think the idea of not having this monolith is
Because if you used all the different colors, it could look like 4 buildings. I mean, you could make it whatever you wanted, and
that could be
blend
funky.
in.
Oh,
Like
that'd be lovely.
That's what they do in Amsterdam. They have buildings that are often really similar, but they're different colors, and it looks very attractive. It could be very playful.
So to be clear, we're thinking in an ideal world, the parking could exist, I guess, shielded by the building, and the building would sort of like curve around, let's say going from this area that says roof deck, curve it around from, like left to right, and there'd be some sort of entrance that that leads to parking that is masked by the footprint of the building along the curve. Is that?
That could be a possibility, or maybe they could share an underground parking, with the there are possibilities. It is I think we need to acknowledge, we should acknowledge it's a very, very, very difficult site. It's much more difficult than Patrick Cleary's site.
Yeah.
Much more. And in a way, keeping it just, if someone could buy it and just make it grass or a park, it probably would be better.
I agree. I thought about that. How lovely would it be if the town of Concord bought that?
If the town bought it, exactly.
The town should buy it because it's a place where the bicyclists can all come.
Yeah.
Right now, there are not enough places for people to eat outside at Neshoba Brook. The tables get all taken.
They do.
And it'd be wonderful. And it would also, with the Sudbury part of the rail trail opening, it's going to be huge. It's just going to be huge.
And you have water right there. I mean, you could, if you had a little park at the end near the water.
It could be beautiful. Kids could fish. It could be an incredible park asset for the town. And it would mark, and then Patrick's building would mark the entrance. I mean, it all would make so much more sense than this parking nightmare here. It just doesn't work.
You could also bring food from different places like Deborah's, and they've got a little bit of outside, but not enough.
They don't have enough. So it's a way for us to really, guys, I'm getting really excited like this. Do you know anyone really rich?
We want a park in West Concord.
Let's get $2 million. I bet we could get it for 2 million.
So I have a question. What if the amount of, I guess, retail plus residences was smaller to the point that you could have additional green space and your parking requirement would be lower? Would that be a scenario on which this would still be developable? It would just be something smaller that allowed for a better aesthetic around it.
Yeah, I think but then you got with Patrick Cleary thinking the money, it doesn't pay. That's the issue. The reason he's suggesting it's all money. But it's certainly worth positing. I mean, what if we made a beautiful place where you could really park and it had a small building that, you know, like
Yeah.
Anna was saying, was kind of a gateway. And
Well, I mean, the developer right now is proposing that these would be condos. So what if you made fewer units that were condos and they were larger and they could accommodate, I don't know, like multiple people living in the condos? You'd have less of a parking requirement. I mean, especially if you only built, say, 4 units, which I know is much less than what's currently being proposed, but then you don't even have like an affordable housing requirement. I know we need affordable housing in our town, but that's the way a developer would avoid having to subsidize an affordable housing unit with the regular priced units. You could, you know, possibly put in some pretty large condos that would be, I think, well received by the town. People who want to move into a place they don't have to do maintenance in a yard and stuff like that.
Downsizers would love it, but you're looking at, I would imagine downsizers, and you might know this better than me.
oh, yeah, me, I know it. I'm a baby boomer.
No, I'm saying for size wise though, they probably want at least 16 to 1800 square feet. If they're moving from some of the fancier areas of Concord or elsewhere. I mean, that to me is not downsizing, but what was the smallest size that he was proposing for the condos? Is that
Good question. So 3 bed, 3 bath. It might be a little bit tough
Big.
to see.
That's huge.
Yeah,
That's huge.
it's going to be
This
tough. Yeah.
Possible on that plot, but
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so let's see. Well, if this is to scale, the retail is 1100 square feet, and you can probably fit what, like 1.5 of the retails into the 3 bed, 3 bath. So what do you think? Like maybe the 3 bed, 3 bath is 2000 square feet.
which is bigger than my house.
Yeah. Bigger than a lot of houses. So yeah, I don't know, like if you put one, I don't know. It's hard for me to really know what the math would be, but maybe you could have, if you had bigger units, it I think reduces your parking requirement a bit, like bigger units, less of them, less parking is required. You could have more open space and have a bit more room to play with the building and the positioning on the lot. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea too.
And
Yeah.
underground, I think underground would be great.
Underground parking, that's just super expensive, but yeah, the underground would be good too. I think that's expensive, particularly when you're next to a waterway.
Okay.
Can leak.
But
But they did it at Brookside. It just makes
is podium
Did it
parking
at
very
Brookside?
expensive? It doesn't seem like it would be. Podium?
podium parking would be great, I think.
It's not as expensive though, is it?
No, it's not
Right,
as
it's
expensive,
not.
but
Yeah.
it's that, yeah.
To kind of like keep the parking from spilling out on all, you know, sides of the building and making it just like a building plus a parking lot. I think it would be just a more attractive parcel.
So it's more like a U shape of a building with
Mhm.
parking tucked and with nuances of color and shape.
That's brilliant.
sides.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was so fun.
A little bit back more from the road.
And
Yeah.
a little bit back. And that's the one thing, I can't believe you brought that up, because I was worried it's too right on the road. You know, literally, it's like 6 feet
Trees,
on the
tree lined, because
road.
we
Tree
could
line,
break up urban space for climate
right.
Yeah.
control. We need to
Mm.
have trees for breaking
Right.
up
But I
as-
think Anna's point was really good. It was too close into the road. It's like right
Yeah.
here. And the current, that's not how, it's scary. It'd be like scary. You'd open your door, you'd hit a car.
why would anybody want to live like that either?
I know, especially because that corner unit is like literally everyone will walk by you. That's a residential unit on the bottom. I mean, I know we have to be positive, but it's a little bit tricky with this one.
Isn't Patrick Cleary's also right on the sidewalk? I'm not sure if that's any different. And he's including units on the first floor as well.
I'll tell you what the
Going
difference
down
is.
the rabbit hole here.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what the difference is. The sidewalks are wider on Commonwealth Avenue and and it's a street that has directly opposite buildings. And so it creates a corridor. This
Well,
does.
then let's suggest that the sidewalks in front of this building need to be wide enough to be safer and to accommodate pedestrian use.
That's a great idea. And
like
that
that.
will
Let's
make
not
the
just say
footprint-
you'd be living on the street when there's going to be a building almost directly next to this one that's going to be very, very similar. Architecturally, right now, they aren't similar, but in terms of being right on the sidewalk, they're both going to be right on the sidewalk.
But there's
Everything in the center of West Concord is right on the sidewalk.
But there's less sidewalk with Patrick's versus this one, I think.
And
right?
this one has less sidewalk, and this one, Patrick's is on a corridor, and people non-consciously, this is what I study, they non-consciously slow down in a corridor situation like that. This building, unfortunately, is right onto the exit ramp, right onto a highway. So people are in driving mode here.
So I'm taking Barbara's point in that you can't like kind of apply the rules differently across the developers. I mean, I think maybe the key is that we want to make sure that whatever the sidewalk width is that's going to be in the junction in front of Patrick's building is the same sidewalk width here. Like we want it to be
And it's not.
kind of cohesive.
Patrick, but I think also though people will go slower. People aren't going, that's that's a whole nother thing. People are just driving. Well, there are too many crashes. We know there are lots of crashes on Comm Ave anyway.
I think so. Patrick's
That's a different issue. If
Yeah.
we are concerned about traffic and the corner, we have said that now over and over and over. We've said it's a difficult, awkward spot. We've said that many times. I think that if we then say, oh, but it's all right on the building and it's right on the sidewalk, we've now moved into something entirely different. And and Susan is correct. We cannot say it's okay 50 feet further up on the road and it's not okay here. That's not being fair to the person who's trying to come up with it. I agree with you. I don't think it works right now. But I think when we get down to the picky little points of the sidewalk's not wide enough, then let's just say the sidewalk needs to be the same width. They've just widened the sidewalks along a lot of that part of the street. It needs to be the same width. This building also has a path going back towards the river, which is just what Patrick added. So there are a lot of ways in which they are in fact very similar because visually they're not similar, but in terms of structure on the site and working towards the brook in the back, they are similar in that way in terms of things on the roof. I agree that Patrick's building right now is visually more appealing because he has mirrored Concord Outfitters. That's the only building he's mirrored in the center of West Concord. He doesn't look like any of the other buildings in the center of West Concord. He does. Remember all the pushback when Brookside went in? Oh, it's too modern. It's too this. It's too that. No, people don't think that way about it anymore.
Actually,
we could use a different view of where this building is going to be. They're not that far along yet. This is an entire redesign from what we first saw. And it's not the easiest way for to see what it's going to look like. I agree with that, but let's not get down to the fact that it's got things in common with the building. Of course, there are going to be trees. Of course, you can't even build in Concord without trees at this point. We've established ourselves as a community for which trees are really, really important. But I think we are reading too much into what they have right here when it's clear to us that this particular design they're showing us doesn't seem to work for several reasons. And maybe we need to make that broad statement with the 8 reasons why we think it doesn't work, rather than going down the rabbit hole of every little picky thing we think needs to be changed. They're not far enough along yet for us to be picky.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think well, let's just go broad, guys. I mean, the problem is it's 8:45.
Yeah.
And when does this, I'm a little worried that we're gonna miss getting this in. When does this have to be in? Susan?
I have checked the planning board, and like the developers aren't on the schedule there yet. They wouldn't be on the schedule at the ZBA until they're on the schedule of the planning board. So I don't have visibility to it, but I'd love for us to, I've been jotting down the notes, and I think what I'm going to do after we kind of go through the rest of these points is I will bring it all together and I'll circulate it around, and we can agree sort of asynchronously and do some edits and take like a week to shape it up and then send it over to the planning board. That would be my vision of our timing. Do you guys think that we could achieve that?
I think that's fine. And I think what
Yes.
Barbara said was great too, that basically the plan doesn't work. And I mean, just explain
Well,
why.
that's not
Well,
exactly
the way
what
you
I'm
said
saying.
it.
I would never say the plan doesn't work. But
Well,
I
what did you say?
have to
What did you say?
reiterate what our concerns are in a broad sense without going into picky little points about there need to be trees or why would people ever want to live on the sidewalk? Look at the rest of West Concord.
Yeah, it's close to the
Everything.
sidewalk.
That's
Yeah.
the whole.
But
That's
people aren't living, there's no residents on the sidewalk. What I
yes,
was.
there actually is an apartment building right smack in
The
the
one, that one,
center of West Concord.
yes, not far from Phillips, but what I also wanted to say that I misspoke when I said about sidewalk, what I wanted to say is Patrick's building has less street square footage than this one does. And there's a little bit of a difference between the two buildings and the design and how it feels because of the actual square footage that faces the street.
That's
I
exactly
see what you're saying. So yeah, so street frontage, there's less with Patrick's building because there's those two side jut kind of footprints.
But
Whereas
this
this one is
so, and I
smaller.
think what Ann was saying is that earlier, I do not mean to speak for you whatsoever, this one seems bigger because there is more street frontage.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
really good point. No, it's a really good point. But I think we need to write it up and get it, and we need to figure out, because I'm a little confused when the deadlines are. Is it going to be before Christmas, after Christmas? What's going on?
I would imagine something's going to happen prior to the end of December, but I mean, I think we should give our opinion and get this off our plate as soon as we can, because there's a lot more that is going to need to happen with this development. A lot of other folks weighing in. So let me just make sure that we've got our issues covered.
Who does this go to? Does it go to the developer or Elizabeth Hughes or the planning board, or does it go to all three?
It goes to everybody and it gets posted on the town's website so everyone can read this letter, which is great, so everyone can see that we discussed
Okay, well, that
it.
sounds good. That's great.
Okay, all right, so let's see. The developer has, with their current plan, hit their affordable unit requirement, so that's all good. Parking, I think we've really talked about that a lot. I think I have a lot of material related to parking. Let's see. They're asking for significant parking relief. Basically, I've got it here, 14 spaces as compared to if they were required to do the full, I think 2 spaces per unit, it would be at 28. So they're asking for significant parking relief for the size building they have created. I don't know what to really say about that. I think we believe there's a lot of parking on site on this lot already, and that is kind of detracting from the visual impression that the building makes. So maybe our advice is put the parking, conceal it, put it under the building or something if you are going to have the amount of parking that you even have right now, which is only 14 spaces. Let's see. Oh, so the height of the building at this current time, they're asking for relief on that because they have like the elevator shaft / mechanicals on the roof are like 4 feet above the 30-foot height requirement. And we don't even have to really comment on this if we don't want to, because it wasn't in their presentation to us. But I guess I just wanted to like put that out there in front of the committee that this is another area that they're going to be asking for.
Yeah, but
planning
Anna
board,
commented on it, and I agree. I think she was the one who commented on it, that it's too high. that would be really interesting. I think, I'm not sure we should have that height relief.
So is it just the mechanicals that are increasing the additional 4 feet?
Correct,
So
yeah,
the building itself is not higher than 30 feet.
right, correct,
Okay.
yeah, it's just the mechanicals, yeah, so, I mean, a 30-foot building is allowed in West Concord Junction, and so it's completely within their rights to build a building of that height, it's just that they're looking for the 4 feet of relief, basically, for the mechanicals. So I kind of feel like that's a little bit, I don't know, it's not something that we've really talked about a ton. Are you guys okay with us not commenting on that? Just because I think what we're concerned about is like the living space within the building is enclosed within the 30 feet. Like we want to make sure that that requirement is met, and it seems like it's met. Yeah, okay. All right, I'm gonna take this out. Let's see. The incorporation of the MassWorks grant. So this is the Kenny Dunn Square plan that may or may not come to fruition if a grant is achieved by Concord Public Works. And I think maybe we want to just reiterate within our letter that we would love it if the developer worked with Concord Public Works to make the most of that grant should it be received, and makes that Kenneth Dunn Square intersection safer to the best of their ability.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's complicated because it really should be a T intersection, and that's not what they're looking at.
Right, yeah,
It's all kind of a mess.
yeah. I mean, they're looking at trying to improve it, which any improvement is good, but yeah, we would love it to go fully towards a T. Let's see, so there's a sidewalk in the plan that that doesn't really connect anywhere at the moment. It's let's see, I think this one right here, and we brought this up before, and it's also in some of the other evaluations of the plan. So I think we can rest assured that it's on the radar. Oh yeah, this is it right here.
That's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Well, and it can't be built this way because there's nothing for it to connect to on the other side. So something is going to have to happen with it. I think we're just pointing it out again. It's an issue from the previous plan as well.
Crosswalk, not sidewalk, right?
It's a crosswalk. Yeah.
Crosswalk.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, it doesn't really have any place to go. All right. So, and then there was, like, in our past meeting, there was a little bit of talk about traffic counts and transportation, car flow studies and stuff like that. And I think that is a little bit, that's going to be in someone else's wheelhouse to evaluate, because there's studies that are kind of competing that have been posted online already. And so I think the planning board is going to need to parse through that. But I guess I just wanted to let you guys know that I did investigate these studies that someone, a member of the public, had brought up that they were in conflict with each other. And I think it's up to someone else to really figure out what the correct number is of traffic flow and then use that in this evaluation. Okay, so I think we've had a really good discussion and put forward a lot of good suggestions. And as Barbara was mentioning, I think as all of us want to do is recognize that this developer did change their plan significantly after hearing our feedback and the planning board's feedback. And we want to recognize that within this letter, which I will do. I may throw in a paragraph about the junction and, you know, our design guidelines that we are interested in seeing adhered to for the junction. And then launch into these different, you know, new pieces of feedback related to this updated plan. Does that just kind of at a high level sound okay to everyone for
Sounds good.
Sounds good. The letter? Okay.
Great.
Okay. Awesome. So I'll be fixing it up and probably sending it around to you guys this weekend. All right. So one last piece of business that we have is to approve our minutes from last week. Last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. I still haven't gotten around to our October minutes, but I'll circulate those independently. And I'll probably just do a very brief set of minutes for this meeting since we didn't have anyone who was doing it. But let me go to my minutes folder.
Didn't I send you October minutes?
You sent me November. I was in charge of October. So Yeah,
So I did send you just from the last November meeting. I also sent you October meeting. I'll find them and send them to you again.
oh my gosh, I would love that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. That would be amazing. All right, so here we go, minutes. This is probably it right here. Oh, October, here we go. No, this is actually September. Hold on one second. I need to see this in a different view. See this. Minutes. All right, well, so I'm going to go into my email and pull out the minutes that Barbara sent me. Here we go. Okay. Docs. Okay, so this is what happened last meeting. Let me crank this up for all of us. Go to 150. Okay, let's see. We started our meeting at 7. I'm going to correct this on the fly here. Ferrari. So Linda is nearly a member. She still has to get approved by the select board, but hopefully that will happen soon, and then she can become a member of our committee. So yay. All right, got everyone accounted for. We did September minutes. Okay. And Feldway was welcomed. Just put that in. All right. The developers presented. And then Barbara has outlined the changes. Okay, the restaurant was eliminated. 2 residential units were added with retail and 14 parking spots. All units have balconies, common roof deck and roof gardens. Building all electric, dumpster eliminated. A new driveway added. Flat roof and a variety of colors and siding materials. Yeah, that is true. I think we all agree that there could be a bigger variety. But yeah, let's keep this. There would be 2 affordable units on the 3rd floor, all units for sale, not rental, and pathway. Asked a bunch of questions. Solar capacity and EV. Traffic concerns. Design of Canton Square. Okay. All right. I mean, this all looks very factually accurate to me, but does anyone else see it differently? Does anyone else have any other edits to this? So I guess I can make a motion for approving the minutes from November 1st, 2023. So I make a motion that we approve those minutes.
Second.
Great. All right, so I'm going to do, I guess, a roll call vote. Barbara, do you approve that we approve minutes?
I do.
Okay, Anna.
Yes, I approve.
Okay, Anne.
Yep.
Okay, Nicole.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so the minutes are unanimously approved. We'll hand those over to the town clerk. And I guess now I would like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting. This, I think, is going to be our last meeting for this year, although you'll be hearing from me over email to organize us for next year. I have some ideas on projects we can pursue, and I'd love to get your thoughts on those. I can do that over email. But did anyone else have anything they wanted to raise before we adjourn?
Well, just quickly, I know it's been really long. You did an excellent job, Susan. I've enjoyed working with all of you. I just want to say quickly that I think the idea that I've heard is about really getting a grant to pursue understanding parking and safe transit issues in West Concord is really needed. And we can learn a lot from other cultural districts. They've done amazing things because parking is a huge issue here. Safe transit is a huge issue, and we really need to look at it. And I think we could take that on as a 2024 action item. And it'd be really great if we did it. Especially, I think urgency, because with the rail trail opening in Sudbury, you know, it's just, we're just gonna have so many more people. And
So yeah, I think I think we have the opportunity to work with some other committees as well, which like there's strength in numbers, and it really helps leverage all of our brain power if we've got other folks who are also engaged in working on the same thing. So for instance, the Transportation Advisory Committee might be a good collaborator for us. There's another committee in West Concord. It's the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee, and they are keenly interested in making the junction more walkable, bikeable, et cetera, and raising the profile of the arts in West Concord. So those are some ideas on ways we can be proactive and help revitalize and you know, make sure that West Concord is a resource for everyone who wants to enjoy being here. Does anyone else have thoughts on, I don't know, projects we should pursue in the new year, or things that, you know, have caught your interest in West Concord?
I have one, but it's too big for the last 5 minutes, but I would like to think about a West Concord Greenway that sort of maps out all the different hiking places and parks and waterways, so people sort of know what is here, because we have a lot here.
Yeah, I like that. Arts. Yep. I think that would be something great to work on with other committees as well, because I think other folks would really be intrigued by that idea and be supportive of it.
Especially as our population density like increases dramatically.
Yeah, yeah. Any other closing thoughts before we adjourn?
Happy New Year.
Yeah, I know. Yes, Happy New Year, everybody. All right, so I make the motion that we adjourn the meeting tonight at 9:02 p.m.
Second.
All right. Okay. I might need to do a roll call vote. I'm not sure. So, Nicole, do you agree that we adjourn?
Yes.
And you agree that we adjourn? Okay. Anna, do you agree we adjourn?
Yes.
And Barbara, do you agree we adjourn?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks all of you guys for your input tonight, and I'll be circulating the next round of the letter. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.